Well, welcome to the famous love story of a French-Canadian woman, Evangeline, illustrated by Joseph Boggs Beale, depicted in antique hand-painted glass slides projected on the big screen just as they were more than 100 years ago by the Magic Lantern. This is the forest primeval. The murmuring pines and the hemlocks, bearded with moss and in garments green, indistinct in the twilight, they stand like the druids of old, with voices sad and prophetic. This is the forest primeval, but where are the glad hearts dancing beside it, huh? Where is our thatch roof village, the home of our Acadian farmers? Scattered now like the dust in the mighty winds of October. This, then, is a mournful tradition still sung by the pines in the forest. In our Acadian lands, on the shores of the basin of Minas, dwelt Benedict Bellefontaine, the wealthiest farmer in Grand Pre, and gentle Evangeline, his child, the pride of the village. And near them lived Basil, the blacksmith, honored among all men, and his son, Gabriel Lajeunesse, playmate of gentle Evangeline. Often, in the barns, they climb to the topmost rafters, seeking with eager eyes that wondrous stone that the swallow brings from the shore of the sea to restore the sight of his fledglings. Lucky was he who found that stone, the nest of the swallow. Thus, from early childhood, they grew up together, brother and sister. There passed a few swift years, and they no longer were children. Gabrielle had become a valiant youth, Evangeline, a woman now with the heart and hopes of a woman. No longer brother and sister, lovers now and ever faithful. Bonsoir! Evangeline's father welcomed Gabrielle's family. Come, take thy place by the settle, which is always empty without thee. Benedict Bellefontaine, thou hast ever thy grace, said Basil, but entre nous, all else are filled with gloomy foreboding and see ruin before them. 4 days now are past since the English ships at their anchor ride at the Gaspereau's mouth with their cannon pointed against us. What the design may be is unknown, but all are commanded on the morrow to meet in the church where His Majesty's mandate will be proclaimed as the law of the land. Oh, Basil, safe are we? We've no arms here, no cause for their concern, just our cattle and meadows. Come, here is René Leblanc with the papers of marriage. Shall we not be glad and rejoice in the joy of our children? Our children soon filling our homes with delight and abundance, eh? So pass the evening away between joy and foreboding. Next morning, lo, with summons sonorous, sounded the bell from the tower, and over the meadows a drum beats. Thronged ere long was a church with men. Without, in the churchyard, waited the women. Then came the guard from the ships into the sacred portal. Up rose the British commander and spoke from the steps of our altar. Clement and kind is our king, but you, You have treated his kindness with discord. Hear then the word of our monarch, namely, that all your lands and dwellings and cattle of all kinds forfeited be to the crown, and that you yourselves from this province transported be to other lands. Prisoners now, I declare you. Silence. We stood in speechless wonder, and then rose louder and ever louder a wail of sorrow and anger, as by one impulse moved we madly rushed to the doorway, but vain was the hope of escape despite our cries and fierce imprecations. Next morning, we prisoners were marched to the shore by the soldiers. Gabrielle, cried Evangeline, be of good cheer. We love one another, monsieur. Nothing can harm us, whatever mischance may happen. Smiling, she spake these words, but great disorder prevailed amid the tumult and stir of embarking. Busily plies of freighted boats, and in the confusion wives were torn from their husbands, and mothers too late saw their children leapt on the land, extending their arms with wildest entreaties. So, unto a separate ship were Basil and Gabrielle carried, while in despair on the shore Evangeline wept by her father who was dying of heartbreak as the British set fire to our village, to our church, to our barns, to our homesteads. Many a weary year passed after the burning of Grand Pré. Far asunder on separate coasts, we Acadians landed, scattered were we like flakes of snow, friendless and homeless. So, the golden stream of the broad and swift Mississippi floated a cumbrous boat that was rowed by our Acadian boatmen. With them, Evangeline went through a wilderness somber with forest, day after day, seeking, always seeking Gabrielle. With endless search and endeavor. And one night, as the prow of the boat rose one of the oarsmen, and as a signal sound, if others had, like them perchance, sailed on these gloomy streams, blew a blast from his bugle. Nearby, so near amid the numberless swamps and hummocks in a swift light boat speeding north o'er the water, Gabrielle paused, listening in the fog. But he heard not his lover calling. So no voice replied to the bugle, no answer came from the darkness. And when the echoes had ceased, like a sense of pain was the silence. Years passed as Evangeline searched. Once she heard of Gabrielle from trappers and Indians, and Gabrielle Lajeunesse. We have seen him. He was with Basil on the savannah, but both have gone to the forest. Coureurs de bois are they, and famous hunters and trappers. But when over weary ways, over high and perilous mountains, Evangeline attained at length the depths of the deepest forest, found she there Hunter's Lodge, deserted and fallen to ruin. Thus did the long, sad years glide on in many forests, on many plains. Fair was she and young when in hope began the long journey, and faded was she and old. And in disappointment it ended. At last, she became a sister of mercy, frequenting lonely and wretched rooms in the crowded lanes of the city where distress and want concealed themselves from the sunlight. And then one day, on a pallet before her, stretched the form of an old man. Long and thin and gray was a lock that shaded his temples, but as he lay in the morning light, his face, just for a moment, seemed to assume once more the form of its earlier manhood. Gabrielle. Oh, mon amour, whispered the gentle voice. And then he beheld in a dream once more the home of his childhood, as in the days of her youth, Evangeline seemed in his vision. Vainly, he strove to rise, and Evangeline, kneeling, kissed his dying lips and laid his head on her bosom. Sweet was the light in his eyes, and then slowly it sank into darkness. We still stands the forest primeval, far, far from its shadows, side by side in their nameless graves. The lovers are sleeping. From its rocky caverns rumbling, the deep voice neighboring ocean moans, and in accents disconsolate answers the wail of our forest. Evangeline. It's a sad, sad story. It is fiction, but it's based on real events. The British actually did drive about 12,000 Acadians from their home along the coast of Canada, dropped them off into cities down along the United States, and just dumped them, left them to their own devices. Many of them died. Some of them made their way down to Louisiana, which was French-speaking, and became the people we know today as the Cajuns. So Acadians to Cajuns. The story, very interesting history. It was written in 1847 by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Longfellow's an American, but he's writing about French Canadians. So this American story over the years has become a kind of epic of the Cajun experience, almost like a national anthem for them. Very, very famous among the Cajun people. The illustrations here are by Joseph Boggs Beale, who did most of the illustrations for our shows. In this case, he based a number of them on earlier engravings by Frank Dixie. Dixie was a very famous British artist, in fact, president of the Royal Academy. In some cases, Beale just changed the images a little bit to make them project better, but in other cases, he made some very significant changes. Look at what happens here. Now here is Dixie's view of the boat lost in the swamp. It does give you a sense of Evangeline searching there. But now watch what Beale does with it. First thing he does is make a magic lantern day to night dissolve. That was a common thing done with a magic lantern. You'd put the day slide here, project it, the night slide here, and then gradually change the light from the day to the night, and the image would change from a day view to a night view. So that's what's happening, but in a much more dramatic fashion than usual. The night scene becomes really this fantastical sense with the overwhelming underbrush and fronds there, the owl and alligator and the sun setting, giving it this rich dark glow. And now look at the boat itself and compare the two. The priest is no longer looking backward there. He's looking forward, kind of trying to maybe see the future in the reflections of the water. Evangeline herself is much more twisted to the side, as though the weight of this search is just pressing down on her. Her head is no longer above the skyline. It's subsumed now with the trees and the underbrush of this swamp. The light on the bow is reflected out ahead in the water, a kind of will-o-wisp dancing before them, always ahead, but they never get closer to it. Very much a symbol of what Evangeline's search has been like. So a rather prosaic image of Dixie's becomes a real tour de force of narrative art in Beale's hands. Now, if you've enjoyed our shows, give us a thumbs up, share with your friends, and press the subscribe button. That'll let you know when another great video is coming up. Thank you.